An analogy is a rhetorical device that can be useful in illustrating a point efficiently. Saying this simpler, more well-trodden, or more familiar idea is similar to this new idea can have a lot of persuasive power. Over the past few months, I've heard a lot of analogies in reference to AI art. Many of these analogies have been quite bad. Analogies that seem useful at first, but completely fall apart because their cores are fundamentally broken. Of course, a literal perfect analogy would not be an analogy, but I'm not talking about a few mismatches, I'm talking about comparisons that don't even make sense. With the ever-looming threat of AI taking thousands of jobs, and those who insist these fears are exaggerated, or insist this will not happen, or in fact, if it does happen, it's a good thing, a lot of emotions have been charged, and a lot of online arguments have taken place. So let's start with the best analogies and move to the worst, and scrutinize their merits and demerits along the way. AI art is just like photography. The idea with this is that just like with the invention of photography, AI art is a new way of making visual representations far quicker and with less skill, and that artists were up in arms about the death of art when it was announced too. But no such great replacement ever happened. While there were artists and critics who pushed back against photography when it first appeared, there's this one quote from a very prominent artist at the time, and this quote from critic Charles Baudelaire, for example, "I haven't found enough evidence there was some widespread and pervasive movement against photography from artists." Consider that when photography first came onto the scene, it was far more laborious than taking photos today. It was slow to catch on, and everything was in black and white. There were, of course, comments from critics about how photography was not real art, which certainly has parallels with AI art today. Another problem with this comparison is that photography captures an image of what you put in front of the camera, which is limited to whatever you have access to in the real world at the time. AI art is a computational hallucination informed by millions and millions of artworks. You could say the skill level and time involved with each of them is comparable, but the inputs for these outputs are not. This is currently the best analogy for AI art I've encountered despite its flaws, and it's the only argument I find even mildly convincing as a rebuttal to the concern that AI art will replace artists. Throughout all the art history classes I've taken, whenever the invention of photography is brought up, the emphasis is that photography, over many years, changed art. It did not replace it. It is possible that AI art will simply change how art is made and not diminish the quality of it or amount of people making it. But it's within the flaws with this comparison that I think a less optimistic picture is painted. In the rapidly changing age of AI, it's important people stay informed. However, with the plague of media clickbait and outright misinformation on the internet, this is often easier said than done. That's why I'm excited to tell you about an app and website I've been using that is working to solve this issue. Ground News is a small independent team that is working to add context and transparency into the information we consume. For example, when I was researching, I came across this story on reports of Europe wanting a label to accompany any AI-generated media. On the website is an intuitive visual breakdown of the news outlets covering it. Here we can see the total number of sources reporting on this and the bias distribution of the coverage. In this case, it's pretty evenly covered by the left and right, with the majority of sources from center-leaning. For each article, you can see who owns the outlet, the factuality of the sources, and where they lean politically. You can also compare headline and summary coverage. This kind of quick overview can be very helpful for my research and for spotting trustworthy information. I particularly like that we can follow specific topics such as artificial intelligence to get notifications on breaking news and even blind spot stories that are over or underreported by one particular side. In this way, it's easy to stay fully informed and find information you might otherwise miss. If you find this as useful as I do, go to ground.news/solarsands. Sign up for free or subscribe through my link before July 1st for 30% off unlimited access. I believe this is a crucial service to combat media bias, and I would like to thank Ground News for sponsoring this video. AI art is like chess being played by computers. I think the idea with this is that chess is a sports-like, okay, I guess it's a sport. And so computers outperforming chess grandmasters has no real effect on the sport. So there will be no real negative effects with human artists being outperformed by computers. Chess didn't die, chess players didn't diminish, so why will artists? An alright comparison to make the point that a lot of people like to consume art for art's sake. The problem is that art has plenty of utility beyond competition. Sports are for entertainment. The point is to watch human beings compete. Some art realms have aspects of competition, a ferocious pursuit of beauty, even pushing the limits of human achievement. But we need to be honest with ourselves. Most art is a product. People don't like to be told this because we have all these notions about individual expression and soul, all this mushy emotional stuff that comes with the exalted mantle of artiste. But I think we tend to overstate these notions. That's only part of the reason people make art. Contrary to the popular saying, you can't make art if you're actually starving. Art has a price tag. People can sell it. People can buy it. It's an economic asset. It's a means to an end. It's dictated by the same calculus of risk and reward, supply and demand as anything else. Art is also everywhere. It's not just paintings that sell for ludicrous amounts of money in auction houses, or the Instagram artists, or the landscapes your grandma makes. It's in packaging, stock illustration, posters, billboards, commercials, user interface design, industrial design, architecture, video game design, movie concept design. Art keeps people alive not just spiritually, but economically. It can be good therapy, but it can also be the cause for therapy. It can be fun, but it is also a job. Art is a job. Tons and tons of what we consider fine art today was initially made for money because it was the artist's job. A lot of artists make artworks not just because they enjoy it, but to gain followings, to gain influence, to build brands, to make money, because it is their job. The ideal in a healthy society is that people get to fulfill their artistic vision and not be influenced solely by the pursuit of profit. But without the expectation of making money, a lot of art simply would not exist. If you sell your art, or sell the idea of your art is a product. I don't think that devalues it by default. I don't think that makes it not art. But here's the economic reality. When a company needs to produce 1,000 unique concepts so that they can get a good idea for something new in their product line, are they going to pay a team to do it? Or are they going to pay the far less expensive monthly subscription to Midjourney version 17? Or better yet, they'll produce their own personalized AI model trained on the company's archives. Infinite concepts for a fraction of the price. So when people say things like, if AI is capable of taking your job, you deserve to be replaced, I'm really left basking in the callousness of that statement. I'm sorry you think so low of artists who are not at the cutting edge of creative development, a position that has only been occupied by a rare few in art history. I'm sorry you think so low of the people who are out there designing your world for you. There may be a point that AI art gets so good that all I have to do to make the visuals for my videos is input some text and do some post-editing. Now, I doubt I would do this if AI continued to train on art without permission, but if there was a theoretical machine that used just public domain works, I'm not just going to be able to save money, I save a lot of time too. That's less time drawing out references for an artist to go by. If I wanted a custom visual for a video, I would have had to pay an artist. Now, that artist would not get hired. Those are jobs being lost. I don't feel very good about that, but what if everybody on YouTube does it that way as well? What if it makes my videos even better? AI art is like NFTs. This is one of those comparisons where I'm like, you know, your heart is in the right place, but you're way off mark. Yes, NFTs and AI art both have scummy tech bro scammers in them, but NFTs are completely useless. AI art is incredibly useful. The ability to sort of but not really collect digital artworks is silly. The ability to write a sentence and get a more often than not well-rendered approximation of what you were thinking instantaneously is revolutionary. The first AI art video that genuinely made me feel something, the kind of feeling that is difficult for even human artists to evoke in me, was this Dark Souls reimagined as a dark 80s fantasy film video. The concept has been done nearly to death at this point, but when I first saw it, I was floored. It's such a natural marriage of two things I like, yet I couldn't have imagined it for myself, much less render it. It's one of those things that made me think, oh, we're in trouble. I've seen AI art being used in the backgrounds of videos, in advertisements, on the news recently, and in random spots every now and then, slowly seeping in. I saw people in my design and architecture school using Midjourney to generate concepts to base their projects off of, and this was common. NFTs wish they could be as useful as that. Some may make the claim that NFTs and AI art are similar because they're both fads, right? No. AI art is not a fad, it's here to stay. We have to either adapt with it or adapt around it. The last episode emphasized how we should set a precedent for asking permission to train on copyrighted works, and I still believe that. I'm not even interested in past AI models still using copyrighted works as long as AI models of the future use works they get permission for and public domain. Because I'm sure as soon as those are out, models of the past will be obsolete. If that ever happens, I don't have any arguments against AI. That's it, really. I can't think of any ethical tweaks beyond things like bias that can and or should be made to these models. Since it's been talked about so much already, the shock may have worn off, but this technology is still impressive, and it's not going away. Now, I was criticized for not acknowledging the limitations of these systems. So let's talk about the limitations of these systems, of which there are now fewer than there were the last time I made a video on AI art. Hands used to be something that AI models constantly struggled with. Now that problem has been reduced. Letters used to be complete gibberish. Barely letters, really. Now, less so. AI-generated video is now even more impressive and consistent. There are still plenty of problems that current AI diffusion models really don't have a good grasp on. Very specific aesthetics can be a struggle, any sense of three-dimensional space is still severely lacking, consistency is better but still poor, getting anything that is put together in a world that obeys physics is quite difficult, if not impossible, unique compositions are rare and a lot of AI-generated art has a recognizable generic sheen to it. However, while some of these may be hard limitations based on the technique the models use, a lot of these can be viewed as simply challenges to overcome. People will look at tweets like these, with videos demonstrating an AI filter, and pick apart all the ways that the AI failed. Note all the constantly changing elements, give a hearty laugh, pat themselves on the back for being oh so clever, and rest assured that AI is just a cheap parlor trick, because this random AI video is not perfect. All of you need to start looking at the bigger picture. The fact that an AI anime filter can even keep this amount of consistency is pretty alarming. The fact that with a glance AI art can pass for something created by a human is pretty alarming. And that time period, where you have to stare at an AI image to realize it's AI generated, is going to get longer and longer until you just can't. Maybe I'm not as observant as I used to be, but I've been tricked a few times already that something wasn't AI when it was. I've also been suspicious that some things were AI when they weren't. Now I find myself zooming in on every illustration I see, wondering for a few seconds whether I can trust what I am seeing, and ultimately it's just a massive headache. No one can be expected to be a detective every time they see an image online, which is often. Enough with the never statements. AI art models, specifically diffusion models, are unlikely to do some things, but can possibly do a lot of other things. I don't think we've seen their full potential yet whatsoever. Even if there are plenty of things they can never do, I certainly don't think even this brand of AI models are in their final form. I seriously doubt that copying and pasting these long keyword paragraphs that look like the Vietnam War memorial will remain the most efficient method in getting what you want out of the machine. I could easily see someone creating interfaces where you could adjust the images in real time. Or I could easily see some sort of mind-reading apparatus being used to visualize what you have in your mind, combined with some form of automatic optimization, and I don't even think that's that far away. People are a lot more clever than you think when it comes to getting what they want. Just because you couldn't get some specific thing from the machine by tinkering with it for a few hours, doesn't mean that is now the boundary of its power. Simply consider what is possible when you use other tools in addition to these models.
This diffusion model, DALL-E is, people are not yet convinced that this is intelligent. I think it's already convincing that there is intelligence there. But this picture, for example, is asking for a spoon on top of a cup, and you see it put the spoon inside the cup. It doesn't really work. So let me show you what you get out of understanding. I'm going to ask a very strange, question, but which could very well happen, would be useful. Let's say I ask, GPT-4 to draw a screenshot of a 3D building game with a river from left to right, a desert with a pyramid below the river, a city with many high rises above the river, and the bottom of the screen has 4 buttons colored green, blue, brown, and red. Something random, but maybe I'm creating a video game and I want this. If I ask a diffusion model to do this, this is what I get. Looks good, but it's not at all what I asked. If you give it to GPT-4, this is what you get. Exactly what you asked for. It understood, it followed your instructions, precisely. Of course, you might say, okay, but this doesn't look great. But again, you don't have to stop there. You can use this as a sketch in a diffusion model. And if you do that, this is what you get, okay? So it's artistic and it's following exactly, the instruction that you wanted. So I think, this opens up a lot of possibility as you can imagine.
AI art is like collage or photo bashing. Now, to call AI art a collage or photo bashing tool is inaccurate, technically speaking. Collage and photo bashing are art forms in their own right, but even then there are disputes about how much you can't change in a collage until it's copyright infringement. AI art is different from that in that artworks it is trained on inform what the outputs will create, not cut out pieces. There is an argument to be made that this is fair use or that this isn't fair use. Like I've said, I think there's certain stipulations that make me lean towards not being fair use, but the law could see it either way. The fact that AI art models have the potential to cause such catastrophic damage to the art-making ecosystem makes me believe that the companies that made these models really should have just asked permission first. But the tech is out there, so really, even if the big names get taken down, people can still use their own models on their personal computers. AI art is like CGI. CGI caused a revolution in making animated films, and the computer does a lot of the work there too, just like AI. Only insofar that it renders some amount of detail by itself. Other than that, no. CGI is not like AI art at all. CGI is its own art form that requires lots and lots of decision making that the computer is not capable of. Even a basic understanding of the sheer amount of time that goes into CGI animation shows the extreme differences between CGI art and AI text prompting art. AI art is like digital painting / Photoshop. I guess the idea behind this is that digital painting was an advancement in giving people more accessibility to painting and drawing, but other than that, this comparison is almost completely useless. Photoshop doesn't automatically create content. There's no text bar where you can type in what you want and it makes it. There's no button that you can press and it generates an image. That's what ignorant people think digital painting is like, but that's just not the reality at all. It turns putting pigments on paper into pixels on a digital canvas, plus a few time-saving extras. That's it. There's an irony here in that all of these things AI is being compared to, AI will and is seeping into. There's a sentiment going around that AI art requires little to no effort to make. And while that may be true for most users of the tech, it's simply not true for anyone who takes it seriously. When I spoke to AI artists, there's typically a lot more going on than typing in a prompt and calling it a day. There's a fair amount of editing, post-processing, and messing with several tools at once to get what you want, and this process takes a real effort. Now, to say this takes as much skill, or is even close to the same process as making art traditionally, is ridiculous. And to argue it takes the same time and effort seems self-evidently absurd. AI art is useful because it takes less time and effort. That's the main reason people use it. Let's not confuse our concepts here. Calling something fan art or not tagging something with AI art or AI generated when posting an AI work, as if it's on the same level as regular art, is pretty misleading. Just like with the ArtStation fiasco, I'm not concerned with whether it's real art. There is simply a clear and obvious difference between the process of an AI artist and a traditional artist. Let's not start mixing the two because they categorically are not the same. The biggest flaw with all of these analogies, the largest deviation from any other technology we've developed, is that AI art models make creative decisions. It may not be creative in the same way humans are, and it may still have lots of limitations. But when I type in steam locomotive with spider legs into Midjourney, I didn't ask it to keep the train tracks. A more intelligent system might figure out that a train with spider legs wouldn't need train tracks anymore. It figured there was a high probability a train would be accompanied by train tracks, and it put them there. But I also didn't ask it to turn the metal hosing into this creepy hair, or put this organic housing underneath that seems to morph into machine, or make the legs this weird combination of train wheels and spider leg parts. Those are things it added. Things I think are actually kind of clever, things I wouldn't have thought of. Hell, this was a random idea I've had for a while, and this just brought it into fruition, and I think the results are pretty impressive. With some tweaking, I would actually use this. Sure, one could say it arrived at these ideas by accident, that it has no understanding of the things it does, but that doesn't change the results. This is the closest we've ever gotten to a machine producing art on its own. No camera, no software, no other art-making tool holds a candle to it. Most times I pick up a pen and doodle for the sake of doodling, but sometimes I pick up a pen with an idea and I think to myself, what's the point? I can ask an AI to generate it, it will be roughly what I want, and I can just do some editing. And if that's not the case now, it will be soon. Needless to say, I've been drawing less recently. This sentiment is of course shared by others. It's an existential crisis. What reason do most artists have to continue cultivating a skill, especially when it's a skill like drawing that takes a lot of effort and time and personal sacrifice to master? Maybe, somehow, there's enough of a social stigma against AI art that most people won't use it, because they believe they want to maintain some form of artistic integrity. But there's just some things where that doesn't matter. Come on, think about it. What is the one type of artwork where its main consumers have absolutely no care at all for the artistic integrity of the work? Consider that the consumption of porn has in several instances been a driving force behind technology such as VHS and of course the internet itself. I don't think this is any different. Not safe for work artists may seriously be in trouble. Although AI models are difficult to get explicit images out of, there are ways of getting around it, and there have been some posts going around that have shown, how do I put this delicately, convincing results. So, is AI replacing art jobs right now? Well, the evidence so far has been just bits and pieces. There's been one random article of AI taking the jobs of game illustrators in China, with one illustrator saying she simply tweaks AI images for 1/10 of her original rate. Netflix Japan put out a tweet that cited a labor shortage as one of the reasons to produce a short with AI assistance for background images. Now, the short itself is okay. The backgrounds are passable if you don't look too hard at them, but they certainly are not good enough for me to think background artists are going to be replaced soon. One Twitter user found a guide that details how to commission an artist to make a colorless sketch at a cheaper price, while using stable diffusion to render the rest completely. Freelance and self-employed people will certainly have to navigate a now even more difficult world. I kind of expected this bits and pieces implementation, as AI art is currently surrounded by controversy and instability, with likely the biggest unknown being whether AI art can even be copyrighted. So people are only left to speculate. But the thing that made everybody lose their minds was the Corridor Crew short. A video in which they used the Stable Diffusion model and a dataset consisting of screenshots from Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. A fact they disclose as clearly as possible, to create a short video that has the appearance of a hand-drawn rotoscoped animation. This video is pretty amusing, and although it does not look incredible, and there are plenty of things you can pick apart about it, it's an interesting look into what AI is capable of. The art community did not handle this well. Yeah, Corridor Crew could have been a little bit more delicate, and could have mentioned some of the ethical concerns people have, but I'm sorry, this was not being worth this outraged. This isn't the company that made the AI. This is a VFX demo by a YouTube channel which specializes in VFX demos. This short was hours and hours of work with an AI filter on top of it, to the point where the AI filter is kind of the icing. A lot of the entertainment of this video was the editing, acting, and post-production. There was also this strange mob of some reasonable criticisms mixed with confusing criticisms. People saying, it's not animation, it's just rotoscoping. As if animation has not used rotoscoping for nearly as long as animation has been a thing. Why didn't you hire actual animators? Because the whole point is a tech VFX demo to show what's possible without people drawing frame-by-frame animation. This isn't jobs being taken away from animators. If they didn't use AI, this video just wouldn't have been made. Look, I paused on a frame where your experiment failed. Boom, AI art destroyed. Video is bad. By the way, they did bring animators on to react to their work, which the animators made critiques of, because it's an experiment.
All right, so the lip sync's off, definitely. There's some bad mouth shapes.
Pick up a pencil. The entire point is to see what can be made while avoiding the, let's face it, incredibly laborious process of frame-by-frame animation using studios full of people. The intention of these videos was clearly and obviously to explore a different type of animation to potentially help animators. The reality of these tools in helping rather than replacing animators remains to be seen, but I think their intentions should be considered here, and the ethical concerns people had should have been explained to them, you know, not relentlessly shot at them through a screen of petty insults. The message I was getting from all this vicious criticism was not, you should have talked about the ethical implications of the datasets, the more reasonable stance. It was, AI art is always evil and you are bad people for using it, the far more extreme stance. Anti-AI activists have to get around the hurdle that to the average person, AI art is cool, okay? Yes, it's kind of made of art taken without permission, but it's cool. Good luck bullying, and yes, that's what this is, bullying every single person who uses AI. Seriously. I really doubt that harassing people about their AI art pet projects is the winning strategy here, especially when you fail to consider their actual intentions and immediately paint them as villains. I need everyone who is anti-AI to understand that the ethical concerns about AI are not universal, especially not to the average person. Just because lots and lots of people get angry on Twitter doesn't mean the same sentiment is shared by the general public. It doesn't mean it's a settled issue. It doesn't mean people being as vicious as possible means people start agreeing with you. Yes, even if some of the enemy is being vicious with you as well. There's a cognitive bias going on here that lots of movements fall into. People get into echo chambers, they lose sight of what they're actually supposed to be fighting for, and it just becomes a witch hunt every few days. When an experienced, level-headed animator makes a reaction video to the Corridor Crew video, what does he say?
I want to say congratulations and kudos to the Corridor Crew. These guys are artists. These guys created something that was really cool. So in conclusion, I want to address the elephant in the room, and that is AI training on other artists' work without their permission. That's been the big uproar, and I absolutely agree with that. There's no way that someone's art should be used to train AI to create something else, basically riding on the back of their sweat.
So much more graceful than everybody else who went completely hysterical over this. So much better than calling it degeneracy. Like seriously, what are we doing here? You have to actually convince people who are not on your side why AI art is cause for concern. You want to pressure someone, pressure the companies that will have a far more tangible impact on the economic and ethical realities of this technology. Not some random internet users posting their AI art pics. If you want to criticize a wildly popular and well-liked YouTube channel for using AI, make your critiques clear, strategic, and diplomatic. I don't know, act like adults. What's worse is that pro-AI people have figured out the outrage game. Take this post for example, a decently impressive but still obviously uncanny AI creation with an exaggerated caption. Oh, look how good this AI generated thing is, it's going to replace you. Then the poster goes into the replies and baits people, saying, herder, this video is actually perfect. Then hundreds of people engage with the tweet, pointing out the obvious flaws in the video, not realizing the original poster is pretending to have blind devotion and acting stupid on purpose. And bing bada boom, they shill whatever they want on top of advertising the video, now with a much bigger audience, all thanks to people angrily quote tweeting it. And these tweets get millions of views off of this little game. Do you know how many views the guy who made this video got with their tweet? 680,000. How much does the outrage tweet have? 39 million. Stop falling for this crap, you morons. Hate clicks are still clicks. I'm worried that this anti-AI movement is falling into the same pit as other movements before it. Websites like Twitter encourage this kind of ridiculous emotional reaction, and I fear everything is getting way too accusatory and way too stupid, to the point where a lot more damage is going to be done before anything gets better. People need to lay off the bickering, no matter how tempting, and focus on the substantive plays. By constantly dunking on random AI projects, at best, you might be making a small amount of progress on the optical front. At worst, you are playing directly into their hands. I believe there are sides to this, and this is something of a war. And I'm telling you, you need better weapons, and you need to pick your targets wisely. At this time, I can't bring up a statistic that says this amount of people have been or will be replaced by AI. I don't think we'll see reports like that for a while. Especially when you have tech bros embarrassing themselves with fantasies of replacing an entire industry with AI without considering the nuances of that industry even for a second. I don't see it replacing most jobs in the near future. Despite this, AI is already present in low-effort scams and social media content. Other more respectable jobs like being an illustrator who takes commissions for small businesses, graphic designers, advertisers, coloring book illustrators, that stuff may be at risk. But big-name artists who have a brand and a personality that people admire on top of their artwork, artists who work almost exclusively in traditional mediums like oil paint or graphite, artists who make things purely for their emotional content, will probably be fine for the foreseeable future. Any artist who has to do something that requires even a little bit more complexity than illustrating a vague concept will probably be fine. But I have to put an asterisk next to this that says, for now. My honest advice for artists would probably be to start pursuing a second form of income on the side, because it really does seem like a lot of things are up in the air, and I don't know what's going to come down. Make a YouTube channel, post videos of your process, set up paywalls for some of your work, learn some other physical art making skills. Make sure you stay informed about these systems and the politics behind it. And most of all, fight for your rights. Corridor Crew are not the people who will usher in the AI dystopia. It's those in power that insist on asking for forgiveness rather than permission. It's the average person who doesn't do their due diligence. And it's the systems that are designed to keep us hostile and divided.